So I'm basically a neurologist, and today we're going to discuss more, let's say, technical IT digital aspect of medical research. And you have to understand that despite being the, let's say, product owner, as it is called, for the medical informatic platform within HBP, I'm neither an informatician, nor an engineer, nor a data scientist, but my perspective is how those technologies can help us, physician and clinical researcher, advance our research and knowledge. So I will start by sharing with you a few slides about data federation, and then I'll make a demonstration of the medical informatic platform. So why and how federating data in medicine? I think for all of us, it's not very obvious that we have access to a very limited volume of medical data as compared to all what is being gathered in hospital in general. And with the advance of AI and machine learning and many other aspects of medical research, it's obvious that we will strongly benefit from having access to all the data that remains hidden or locked within hospital. Just to give a figure, we consider that in Europe, there might be up to 180 million citizens who have some kind of brain disorder, of course, including benign one or supposedly benign one like headache and migraine and so forth. But that means that so many millions data of value are being locked in hospital to which we do not have access. That's really what drives us, finding solution to unlock those data. Until now, I will say that the bulk of medical research has been based on research data that are collected from the beginning for research, and that has been a model and a successful model for decades. But it has its own limitation. Here I'm just illustrating this most famous public database, ADNI for Alzheimer disease, that has been running for 30 years. But as you see, it has overall collected over 30 years 1,500 patients, deeply phenotyped, so it has a high value. But one of the limitations is the cost. When you look at what amount of money has been invested to build the ADNI cohort, you end up with that budget of more than $100,000 for one single patient. So if tomorrow you're looking for performing big data analysis of millions of individuals, obviously, you cannot afford this cost per subject. And that's why, again, being able to get access to data that have already been collected for clinical practice, let's say at no cost from a research point of view, is essential. But the issue or the objective is not just about big data at lower cost. One point I want to really emphasize, which is illustrated in the slide, is the generalizability of knowledge and model. It has been well demonstrated on many occasions and in many medical conditions that when you train a model on data from a single hospital or in a single center, you ended up most of the time not being able to then validate or apply successfully or confirm the same finding in a more broader way. This has been a major problem for the IBM Watson project, which was a huge, I think, endeavor in the field of medicine and cancer, but who eventually, proved to suffer from this major limitation. So indeed, that the issue of generalizability of AI model, and I'm insisting on this because in my view, this is one of the major incentives to move to data federation across hospital and countries. Now, talking about data sharing and coming back to the basic, we, of course, have been using, as I mentioned, especially in the field of research, centralized data sharing. This has been working, and this still works. When you perform a prospective research study, you aim at centralizing everything, obviously, and you can, because it's being made available through your project, your ethics clearance, and so forth. And you have a number of advantages for doing this. But as I mentioned previously, it also has a limitation, in particular in terms of cost, and most of all, it's well adapted to research project, much less to exploiting clinical data collected in a hospital. Then you have this other model, I'm not going to insist, of institutional incremental learning, where you will indeed use data from several centers, but in a successive way, and that has a number of issues, especially the fact that the model will be much weighted on the last institution where it will be trained. And that leads us with what we're discussing today, federated learning and analysis. In a nutshell, the data always stay in the institution where they have been collected. You don't send them away, and you don't have to face the regulatory, ethics, and data privacy issues that will necessarily come with the fact of sending the data away. So how does it work if you don't send the data away? Where rather than sending the data to a central station, you get, if you wish, a central station sending the analytics to the hospital, to the data, and connecting everything in the way that is still secure from an IT point of view, but where you're then able to send a query through a central station that will then be distributed in whole hospital where the system has been installed. Then the query is being processed in each hospital locally on the local data, and it will then send back aggregated findings. And aggregated findings will be pulled together according to appropriate, let's say, mathematical and biostatistical model to provide you with a final result. Now, federated learning has been known for decades. It's something new, especially for, again, mathematicians working on that concept. But its application to medicine is recent. And if you just perform, as I did, a PubMed hit, where you put federated learning or analytic in title, that's what you see. Until 2020, there were merely no or very few publications in medicine using that approach. But since the last 2 years, that became very popular and more popular. And I'm going to show you a few examples. And for us, that's interesting because in the Human Brain Project, this proposal has been made already 10 years ago. And it was not, my responsibility. I was not in the project at that time. But I must say that the pioneer of the HBP were very thoughtful to propose to develop tools for federated learning and analytic at that time. Now, just give you one example. It's a recent example, but all of you work in clinical research, appreciate a Nature Medicine paper using federated learning that has some value. And here it was being developed for COVID-19, and more specifically for developing a model whereby at the entry at the emergency unit, you'll be able to predict the risk of going to the ICU within 48 hours. So there is a background noise of...
Mute the micro, please.
Okay. Now, to perform that study, they mention here collected data from 20 hospitals, 5 continents, so a very heterogeneous real-world cohort of very different sizes, and that's the whole interest of the project. So the project not only develop and validate the model, and the model is very accurate, but that's not the point for today, but it also validate the methodology. First of all, by showing that you could federate data of different kind, not just clinical data in that case, but most importantly, by comparing the accuracy of the model when it was trained on this very heterogeneous cohort, as compared if it was trained in a single hospital and applied to that hospital. So that's what you see here. You could have anticipated that When you train a model in a single hospital and you apply that model to the same hospital, it will perform better than a bigger model with more data but trained on very heterogeneous cohort. That was not the case. The model of federated learning, which is displayed in green, was better than the local model in virtually all hospitals where it came from. And this is shown here. And this is again illustrated by this other slide. And in some hospitals, the difference were modest, but in other, it was a very big difference. Second illustration, here it's in the field of cancer and being able to work on brain tumor. But again, you know, the point is validating the advantage, the benefit, and the value of federated learning. So here, what you see on this use case is the area under the curve, the performance of the model comparing 4 approach. The 2 least performing one come from institutional incremental learning that I mentioned, including cyclic learning, which is a little bit better. But what I want you to concentrate on is the 2 best AUC, and the first one is centralized data. So we know it's, of course, the most performant. But look at federated learning, it's very comparable, maybe a little bit less performance, but very comparable. So that leads us, now that I hope you're convinced of the value of federated learning, to the platform we developed to perform such learning in HBP. So we call it the Medical Informatics Platform. It's a software, to make it simple. It's open source, free of use, and developed in HBP, but it's going to be part of the eBrains infrastructure, so the sustained European research infrastructure that has been dedicated to neuroscience. It's privacy aware. I will say a few words about that later, and GDPR compliant. And the way it works is that we create network. We call them federation between hospital on a given topic, a given use case. And then each hospital that participates has its own MIP, in which it put its own data, and that creates that network. The MIP, the software, includes both tools for curation of the data, the database itself, of course, and the analytical tool that I will illustrate in a minute. At the moment, we have about 20,000 data set on various use cases, primarily dementia, TBI, and epilepsy and mental health. But we have now a big project running that is promoted and endorsed by the European Academy of Neurology and the European Stroke Organization to federate the National Stroke Registry. And that's really big, because National Stroke Registry are more and more important. They are being used in different EU countries to certify stroke center and stroke unit. So it's mandatory for all stroke center and unit in those countries to systematically collect data for every single patient being hospitalized for a stroke. And they cannot be exported to be centralized. Many of them are partly managed by governmental agency. So the only way to share those data is through federation. And at the moment, we hope to get access soon to 500,000 patients through that federation. And the other important point is that the MIP is very intuitive to use, as you will see, because it was framed for clinical research. Sometimes data scientists might be frustrated that it's maybe too simple or lack of some functionality where you will program your own analysis. It's more, as you will see, based on simple click through the user interface. But I think it's very appropriate for clinical researcher. So what I'm going to demonstrate in a second is how we use it. And basically, we have 3 frames that you will see. The first frame is the one describing the data model. Each bubble is a variable of the data model. The second frame is a descriptive statistic that you can obtain from the different node of a federation. And the third frame allows you to perform a specific analysis that I'm going to show you, like this logistic regression. So what I'm going to do now is doing that demonstration. Here it's a little movie, but we're going to log out of the movie to make a real online demonstration. And here, first of all, you have to understand that you perform the analysis through web-based access. Of course, you need to be accredited to eBrain and accredited to a given federation and its data set. So that's my case, and that's why I could log in that web user interface of the MIP. And here it's a dementia federation. So as I mentioned previously, on the left, it's the data model with the variables to which you can have access. You can type them here if you wish, and you see the different variables that will include the terms MoCA, but I know they are also here, so I can simply click here and I see the MoCA. I just click on it and I can select it other variables. I can do that for whatever variable. Here at the demographic, let's select age. And all those bubbles here on the left, brain anatomy, they are regional brain volume that has been previously calculated thanks to pipeline that is available within the MIP. So here, maybe I want to use the right and the left hippocampus volume as a variable of interest. And finally, I'm going to take a diagnostic variable, which is the so-called Alzheimer broad category. You will understand what it means. So now I'm going to the second frame. And the second frame will provide me descriptive statistic. On the left, you can see 6 elements that are the 6 nodes of the federation. I deselected 2 of them because they are not relevant for today's demonstration. But you have ADNI, this very famous public database in dementia that I've been mentioning before. So the data are public and we could get them. And then we have real life data from a dementia cohort from Lille in France, from CHUV, it's my institution, from Brescia in Italy. So you can see here the 4 nodes that remain selected. And let me just tell you, it's really online. So if I deselected one, everything is recalculated, which means, again, as I mentioned, I'm just sending a query to every node. Please give me the descriptive statistic of the variables I've been selecting for your cohort. Selecting back ADNI, and everything is calculated again online, going to the node and getting back the result to my web-based interface. So here, you know, I have the 4 MIP, the 4 data set with the different variables selected, the hippocampus age, left hippocampus, MoCA, Alzheimer broad category, and with the findings, mean, man, max, standard deviation, number of patients that contribute. I can apply formula and filter here. And what I'm going to do now, just to show you and explain, I'm going to transform that polynomial variable Alzheimer broad category, which have 4 different values. It can be Alzheimer disease, it can be mild cognitive impairment, MCI, it can be cognitively normal or others. Others were available in only one cohort. I want to transform this into a binomial variable for the sake of the last demonstration. And so I'm now saying the Alzheimer broad category variable should equal either Alzheimer disease or mild cognitive impairment only. So I'm applying this, and the query is being sent to the node. And now what I will see, first of all, is that I have only 2 values for these variables, a Alzheimer disease MCI. And of course, I don't have the same number here. I've eliminated a number of cases who were associated with other diagnoses, and everything has been recalculated. Now, finally, I can make an experiment here. And let's say I'm going to do a simple one, which is a logistic regression. Let me say a word before launching it. What you see here the algorithm that are currently available in the MIP for federated analysis. It's not comprehensive because you have to understand it's not that easy to program such online federated analysis. It's not as simple as standard biostatistic, and some machine learning, for instance, cannot be performed through federated learning because they need to get access to all data at the same time at the same place. But I think we have the main one, and depending on the variable you selected, you will be able to use some of them or not. So those in blue are those that are available for my selection today. But if I would change a variable, I could change the algorithm available. You can see that we have very classic biostatistic, linear regression, logistic regression, t-test, ANOVA, and we have some machine learning, the classification and regression tree, the ID3, the naive-based, and the k-means clustering. But in this case, I will make a logistic regression and basically to see whether or to which extent I can distinguish Alzheimer's disease from mild cognitive impairment based on the MoCA, based on age, and based on the right and left hippocampal volume. And so again, I'm sending a query to the 4 different nodes that participate to this analysis, which means on the MIP, where we do have the public ADNI database, the MIP in Lille in France, the MIP in Brescia, and the MIP at CHUV in Lausanne. And at the moment, I'm in France in a conference, so I'm not even at CHUV. The logistic regression is being processed. It takes a little bit more time than the descriptive statistic, but it's a question of a minute. And then hopefully we will have the result of the aggregated finding from the 4 centers, from the 4 data set pooled into one final result. So let's just wait a few seconds. I take advantage of that moment to tell you that among the different data privacy element that we are using, one is that no result can be provided if calculated on less than 10 individuals. So whenever I'm sending a query, including a descriptive statistic, a simple mean or median, it will not be provided if there's a less than 10 individual that can contribute to this analysis and figures. And of course, this is a way to protect from indirect re-identification of a subject. So here you see the final result of my logistic regression. It's just an illustration. I'm not telling you that it's extremely relevant, even though the IUC is rather good, almost 0.9. But actually what is interesting and not surprising is that age and the MoCA are the best predictor, and using the hippocampal volume is contributing, but possibly lightly, and actually only on the left side, not on the right side, for some reason. This is for the demonstration. Did it change your frame for you? Do you see something else than what I showed you? Okay, it's just to show you another data model, because I've been working on the dementia data model, but we have other federation. This one is about epilepsy, surgery, and intracerebral investigation. We have more variables, and we do not have regional brain volume, but we have many other things. This is this is a mental health model where we get the regional brain volume and many other elements about anxiety and so forth. This is, just one second. This is the model that is being developed for stroke, including all what is being done at the acute stage in terms of intervention, in terms of investigation, the data that are available in most stroke registries. And finally, this is the model that we have in traumatic brain injury. Very few variables, but it's given me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about this. The TBI federation include only 2 nodes. but those are the two biggest cohort worldwide of traumatic brain injury. Actually, those are research data. So before I showed you primarily hospital data or registry, here it's research data, one from the project Center TBI, one from the other project Reactive, both being funded by the EU and being competitive. So they have agreed to share part of their data on a limited number of variables. That's why you have so few, because in fact they have many other in their data set. But this is the beginning of having those people accepting to share data to get more knowledge from their two big research cohort. Okay, let me just come for my conclusion slide. And I will be done and happy to answer then all your questions. Yeah, so, just to emphasize again that I do believe that progress in medicine and digital health will benefit from accessing large volume of data, especially from hospital, real-life data, and that federated solution and federated learning offer an optimal solution when you want to get access to those real-life hospital data while still preserving data privacy. And the MIP is one system, one solution. There's others, but it's a well-advanced one, I will say, with a number of benefits. First, it works online. Many federated solutions will be provided by private company who then will, develop a specific use case and not offering a generic software that can be applied to any condition in any hospital. And also, as I mentioned, it was really framed for clinical researchers. So our hope is to get more and more hospitals using it. At the moment, it's already installed in 30 hospitals in Europe, but we're working closely with the European Academy of Neurology to develop it and disseminate it, deploy it much more broadly within the European neurological community. Thank you very much for your attention, and again, we'll be most happy to answer your question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Philippe. Yes, we can open now the floor for questions. I have an initial one just to warm up. You have mentioned that there are 30 hospitals, if I remember well, with this system installed in their facilities. My question here is that apart from, do they need to offer some kind of data, or they can use the federated data without having internally some data sets to be included as a part of the process? What should be the requirements for a hospital to join the network?
Well, so first of all, any hospital who wish to have a MIP can have a MIP. Again, it's free of use. There are contracts that needs to be signed, but other than that, there's no limitation. Now, joining a federation is different. You cannot have, in French, we say le beurre et l'argent du beurre. It means butter and the money of butter. So if you decide to use a federated approach to data analysis, to get access to data while ensuring data privacy, that if the data never leave the hospital, then of course, your main objective is not to make the data public. That will make no sense. So I'm not against at all open science and fair data and making data public, but we need to acknowledge that the majority of in-hospital data will not be made public in the near future for a number of reasons. First, legal and regulatory, but once maybe some of these will have been solved for economic reasons, because the main incentive for hospital to share data is to sell data, as is being done in the US. So basically, at the moment, if you want to join a federation, you need to have an agreement with the other members of the federation to work together. And then usually one requirement is that you have an expertise in the field and that you're also bringing data to the federation.
Okay. So then there are, if I understand well, there are two levels here of users, just a simple end users of the systems, but not part of the federation, that they can use the system and the medical platform. And then there is also another level which requires also to be part of the federation to be able to analyze data and then to provide also data to the federation.
Yes, but where I think we are very consistent is that we have framed the MIP for clinical researcher who are also data owner most of the time. Most of them are data owner. I know very few clinical researchers who have an ability and a willingness to work on medical data and have no data of themselves. So I think that in most cases, the MIP is well adapted to go into that federation organization where you bring data and take advantage of data of others in the medical field where you have an expertise.
Okay, well, any questions from our side? I have another one, Philippe, with respect to the installation system. I understand that it requires to install the software into the servers that the hospital should have. And do you provide some kind of support to do that?
Yes. So the first step is to sign a contract, what we call the MIP installation agreement. It's between the hospital and my hospital because we're the product owner. And the contract is to protect the others because we take then full responsibility, claiming that the software has, all the essential element for data safety. And that's the first step. It takes often some time because the hospital need to get its IT people, legal people, administrative people going through all the element of the contract. Then when it comes to installation proper, you're right, it needs to be installed in the hospital IT system. I will say typically on a virtual machine rather than on a physical server. A virtual machine is sufficient. And then, of course, it's our people who are in charge of providing all the tools for the deployment and controlling the deployment. Usually it's relatively easy and fast. There's a script for the deployment. There's only a few instances where the IT environment was not appropriate, where it lacked the essential functionalities for us to install because we're depending on a number of IT tools. I'm not going to be, I cannot detail, it's not my field of expertise.
Okay, then first there is necessary to sign up an agreement and then to go to the installation phase. Huh?
Yes, yes.
I understand that if one of the hospitals here should like to enter into this process, I understand they could find the forms and the mechanisms in the website, no?
Yes. Yes, and there is an alternative I can mention that a few hospitals, but more and more are using, is that we can propose to offer the hospital a virtual machine on eBrains. So here, what's the difference? Let's start with the similarity. You get your own virtual machine at the hospital, and let's say it's at your name, with your data on it, and you're the only institution who get access to that virtual machine. It's not in your hospital, but it remains only you having access to your data set. No one else in the federation, except for the MIP system that I demonstrated. So you keep your data secure, but you need to still send them away to that virtual machine in the first step, which will need a data transfer agreement. It's more delocalization than anything else because the hospital, again, remained the only partner that will get access to those data.
Okay. If you have any question, please let me know.
And you can use the chat also if you wish.
Yes, let me check here the participants. Que han abierto la mano. Yes, Alejandro, I can see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for the presentation, first of all. And my question is a little bit more about the integration process of the different model updates. So what factors actually drive the weighting of the different model updates when you combine them in the integration server?
So this is a very good question, but this is a question for our biostatistician and the people that have programmed the analytics. I wouldn't be able to give you a precise answer. But what I can tell is that within HBP, the MIP was developed in partnership with a Greek team, and that team who has developed those algorithms in the analytical engine, which is called XRM. You know, I could send you their reference so that you could have them and maybe also retrieve their paper to get a precise answer to your question. The only thing I can tell is not as simple as what we perform in a standard meta-analysis. It's a little bit more complicated, depending on the algorithm.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
There is.
Hi, Dr.
Okay.
I really enjoyed your presentation. I have two questions. The first, are the algorithms in the MIP federated, are they still the same for hospital with the local data? And the second question is, how long does it currently take a hospital to transfer data to the MIP platform?
So the first question, the federated algorithm in the MIP are the same in all the MIP. The only thing that changed is when we upgrade the MIP to a new version and we release a new version, it might have a new algorithm. But otherwise, all the MIP need to have exactly the same package of algorithm to start with when they are federated. That's an essential piece of federation solution. Everything needs to be equal on every MIP node. Otherwise, it's not possible to get them working together and perform the same query at the same time in different places. Regarding your second question, well, there is some manual work to be done, not very complicated, but basically the file, the data file that is being used in the MIP is a CSV file. It's a simple CSV file in the end, and you need basically to create a JSON file to get it inside the MIP in an appropriate way. So there is a script for providing that JSON file, which is this little manual work that I was mentioning.
Thank you.
I understand, Philippe, that this tool has been developed in the context of HBP, and we have 1.5 years, more or less, to finish the project. What should be the next type of activities to enhance the functionality of the MIP, or what should be the priorities in order to have a final version? I understand that you have made a demonstration with a stable version, but you are also working on the new versions for the future.
Yeah.
What are the plans for the future?
I will say the two main development at the moment is on the side of our Greek partner is working on reinforced data privacy by implementing SMPC, multi-party computation, which is a way to indeed increase significantly data privacy. That's one aspect. The other is we've been building a middleware that will allow the MIP to be more agnostic of the analytic engine and to be able to operate with other engine than XRM. We've done that for actually an IMI consortium, and which is led by Novo Nordisk, so Biopharma, and they wanted to use the MIP with the Data Shield, which is an interesting federated analytical engine. And so we've been building that middleware, and we're looking to expand the capacity to use different backend, if you wish, different analytical engine with the MIP. So that's ongoing. And on the HBP will be finished in November 2023. We hope that by that time we'll have concluded all contract with eBrain and the Swiss node, which is being discussed at the moment, so that it will continue to operate, being maintained, further developed, and further deployed, hopefully.
Okay, I expected it would be a reality very soon. Okay, any additional question here? No? Well, I will distribute the slides. I understand, Philippe, that there are no problems to distribute the slides you have presented here.
Yeah.
And then I also recommend to enter into the website to know more about the MIP. And if you were interested in participating in this adventure, I understand that you are no Spanish hospitals into the list of 30.
Well, there is ongoing within the Epilepsy Federation, which is built upon the European reference network called EpiCare, and here we have two hospital in Barcelona and one in another city, the smaller one. I'm sorry, I forgot it. But yes, we'll soon have 3.
Yeah.
In Spain.
Anyway, we'll make you an effort to convince other hospitals to join you. Huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much again, Philippe.
Thank you, Gonzalo.
And then if we have any feedback from our attendants, I'll try to contact you again.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.